Live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the PSBTA Technical Solutions webinar series. My name is Martha Ellis, and I'm the Executive Director of the Public Safety Broadband Technology Association, or the PSBTA. As an association, our primary objective is to work as an end-user responders and service providers. As such, we are here today to discuss recent developments within the FCC regarding our 4.9 gigahertz public safety spectrum. We've heard a lot about FirstNet over the past several years, but what some people don't know is in 2002, the FCC allocated 50 megahertz of 4.9 spectrum to public safety, which stands separate and apart from the National Public Safety Network. Today, that spectrum is in jeopardy of being lost and allocated to commercial use. Because of that, the PSBTA is sponsoring the Public Safety Spectrum Alliance to fight to keep the spectrum for public safety use only. And that is why we're here today, to talk to you about how you can help so that public safety can stand together in order to preserve that 4.9 spectrum for our current and future broadband use. Before we get started today, I just have a couple quick housekeeping items to cover. All attendees have automatically been muted to reduce background noise. Any questions should be submitted directly to us through the questions function, which is located at the bottom of the menu on the right side of your screen. Questions will be answered at the end of our panel discussion. We will attempt to answer as many questions as possible and follow up with those that don't get answered during the live portion of our webinar. An email address will also be provided to you if any additional questions should come up at the conclusion of our webinar, and we will follow up with those as well. Also in the panel to the right of your screen, I would like to point out that there are handouts available that should be downloaded prior to the conclusion of the webinar. These include a step-by-step tutorial on how to submit express comments to the FCC and the PSSA position paper, so you can get a better understanding of our vision, mission, and principles. Today's webinar is a call to action. Public safety professionals have a lot on their minds and plenty to prepare for. Worrying about the expanding needs for broadband access shouldn't be a point of concern. We're asking for your help in preserving valuable public safety spectrum, and joining us today from the PSSA to explain why and how this can be done are Sheriff Richard Stanek, potentially Chief Kim Zagaris. He's very busy on the West Coast with fires. We also have Jeff Johnson logging in with us today to discuss the issue from the fire side. And we also have Andy Siebold, a public safety advocate. We'll be taking you through the significance of the recent FCC announcements and how you can help protect your spectrum. Welcome, gentlemen, and thank you for being with us today. And with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Sheriff Stanek to get us started with our webinar, Public Safety's 4.9 gigahertz web network at imminent risk, first responders call to action.
Okay, well, thank you, Martha, and good afternoon from the great state of Minnesota, where the fall colors are starting to emerge and the leaves are just beginning to drop. My name's Rich Stanek, 36 years in law enforcement. I'm recently retired after serving as the sheriff of Hennepin County in Minneapolis, Minnesota, formerly a Minneapolis police officer and the commissioner of public safety for the state of Minnesota. Now, I was proud to serve in public safety, and I want to take a minute and thank all of you who are continuing to serve in your communities during these challenging times. And also thanks to the Public Safety Broadband Technology Association for sponsoring today's educational webinar. You know, just a few days ago, we recognized the 19th anniversary of September 11th of 2001. And while watching the videos and the stories of remarkable heroism and challenges overcome by first responders on that fateful day, I was starkly reminded of an essential tool that those first responders did not have: seamless public safety communications. We all know what happened as a result. Yet public safety took that September 11th as a challenge and a call to action, and formed a working group of public safety professionals and their national associations called the D-Block Coalition. This coalition faced the challenge head on and was directly involved in the creation of the nationwide public safety broadband network, now known as FirstNet. After a long, rewarding, and challenging career in public safety, I started a consulting group and do work all over the country with public safety entities. And recently I got a call from mutual friends. They asked me if I was up for another challenge. They said they were forming the Public Safety Spectrum Alliance. I asked what that challenge was, and they told me about a move by the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC as we call it, regarding the 4.9 band of 50 megahertz of spectrum that was allocated to public safety back in 2002 just following the attacks of 9/11. And I recall from previous work that the 4.9 spectrum was originally set aside by the FCC at that time to improve public safety communications and address one of the major issues of the 9/11 Commission report. Now, here's the real challenge of today's webinar. It is incredulous to me that the FCC commissioners and their chairman would move with lightning speed. The hearing is just a week or so away on September 30th, and place the 4.9 spectrum issue on their agenda for rulemaking, essentially giving the 4.9 spectrum as an allocation to each state, and then allowing each state to determine how best to use it, with no guarantee of additional public safety usage. And going back on their promise of 2002, ignoring the 9/11 Commission report and the high price public safety paid on September 11, 2001. As I said, this new rulemaking proposed by the FCC does not provide for any new public safety use of the 4.9 spectrum and will allow it to be used for non-public safety purposes. 2020 has been an unprecedented and challenging year for public safety professionals in this country. From the COVID-19 pandemic to widespread civil unrest with riots and looting and calls to defund, wildfires, hurricanes, and unprecedented rises in violent crime across the country, I know that public safety professionals will rise to this challenge as well. I do not know what is driving the rush by the FCC to take back the 4.9 spectrum and ignoring the promises made to public safety, but I do know that wireless technology is advancing quickly and unallocated radio spectrum is hard to come by. Once it's gone, it's gone. Public safety cannot afford to lose any of its spectrum, and through the Public Safety Spectrum Alliance and the hard work and advocacy by all of you, we ask that the FCC slow down, take no action on September 30th, and hear from public safety professionals about the challenges we face, our concerns and needs. Take them seriously and with thoughtful consideration of these actions. In addition, I challenge all of you, public safety professionals across this country, get involved, call or write the Federal Communications Commission, get your associations involved and be heard. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Please stay safe out there. Let me turn this over to Chief Jeff Johnson. Jeff?
Okay, I'm just going to jump on for half a second here because we did have some technical difficulties with getting our fire chiefs rallied for today just because of all of the activity that's taking place on the West Coast. So I'm just going to check in with Chief Jeff Johnson and Chief Kim Zagaris. Are either one of you able to come up with your cameras and your mics open so we can talk to you a little bit about the fireside perspective
Martha,
on the 4.9 gigahertz?
This is Jeff, Martha. So do you have my audio?
I have your audio. Are you able to join us with your camera?
Well, that'd be a bonus if I could. Let's see if we can resolve. Let's see if we can resolve the issue here.
There's a little camera icon on the left side of the GoToWebinar control panel.
Yeah. So I see that, but we do not seem to have functionality here. Let's see if we can fix that.
You know what, Chief? Why don't you just go ahead and then when you're done, maybe hand it over to Chief Zagaris. I can see he's on audio wise. Just hand it to him afterwards, and then we'll move into Andy's presentation on how we can actually help people submit their comments.
That sounds good. I'll be brief. Thanks, Martha. Sorry for the audio only. This is a simple issue. In 2002, after 9/11, public safety was given 50 megahertz of 4.9 spectrum. 4.9 spectrum really didn't begin to hit its maximum usefulness until right now, right as 5G comes along. And one has to assume that the reason someone wants to give it to somebody else is it's valuable. So the question is is why would public safety agree to give that up? Especially now. We're, as the sheriff said, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're in the middle of civil unrest. We have 3 million acres on fire in 3 states in the West. This is no time for public safety to stop serving the community and try to make our case that the promise made in 2002 be kept. It's a simple issue. It is critical that public safety preserve our spectrum, and while it might seem like a rather lofty issue for a typical firefighter, police officer, or paramedic to get involved in, this is exactly the kind of issue we get involved in. Public safety needs to defend our spectrum. We need to defend and keep our ability to communicate and to solve future problems. There's 2 things to add to that. One is our needs for communication, wireless communication, will be defined by the future, not the past. So don't ask us what we did in 1970. It's not relevant. Don't even ask us what we did 3 years ago. It's not relevant. The speed at which wireless technology is changing is setting the pace, and it's driven by the future. And I think probably the last thing I'd say before I ask you to get involved, sign the petition, make calls, write letters. I just want to remind you of something Mark Twain said. Mark Twain essentially said, buy land. They're not making any more of it. Well, the same is true with spectrum. They don't make any more of it. And we would be reticent to sit quietly by while someone takes our spectrum for their purpose rather than public safety purpose. Martha, thanks for inviting me in today. And I'd turn that over to Chief Zagaris, who is out on one of those wildfires. I believe California's got a couple million acres plus burning. And Chief, we probably don't have enough spectrum for your video, but I'll turn it over to you. Thank you, Martha.
Thank you, Chief Johnson, and me too. I'm also experiencing a screen problem, but wow, what a hard act to follow after Jeff Johnson. It's always best to go before him than after him. But I would really add for most of the folks out there, I've been in the fire service for 42 years. 32 of those at the state of California. Hasn't been a major disaster emergency that I haven't dealt with in the state of California, and for that matter, really within the country. 17 as the fire chief. Was able to work through the development of FirstNet, and my hat's off to people like Jeff Johnson and Sue Swenson and the rest of them that really led the way to get us there, and then the work that they did on with FirstNet. But this is different than FirstNet in one respect, that we already have this spectrum out here. I agree with Jeff that the FCC made a commitment to public safety in this nation, and whether it was this commission or another commission that did it, it's still a promise made. Should be a promise kept by our federal partners. I think that in light of COVID that we are watching that continue to evolve, we were dealing with hurricanes, fires, tornadoes, floods. The amount of disasters in this country first start out locally before they become, to our counties or parishes, before they become to our states, before they become a national issue, but they're not becoming less, they're becoming more. We could always do a better job of managing those things we have. The most critical issue in almost every after action report that we see in this country, and I don't care which discipline has it, it always comes down to communications as our biggest item. So I think that we've developed some good experiences with some of the things we've been involved in over the last number of years. But I would tell you this: our first drill really is to really get the FCC to maintain a commitment they made to public safety in this country. Let's make sure we preserve 4.9 for us in public safety, for fire, law, EMS, our emergency managers out there. Let's lock it in. We can debate who manages and how it goes after that, but that's our first drill, is just get them to hold the a commitment they made. Much like Jeff, I would tell you, please sign the petition out there. Please get involved now so we can address these issues together. Like I said, our first battle right now is to just maintain that 4.9 spectrum for public safety, and we can go from there to who manages and how we deal with it down the road. But that's my first request of everybody on the phone, and with that, I'll return it back to Martha.
Great, thank you so much. And honestly, I think it's quite remarkable and demonstrative, clearly, of the fact that we are working public servants. And thank you so much, Chief Zagaris, for taking the time to hop on with us today and give us your perspective, as you are clearly in the trenches there in California. And another point I would like to make, and not only for the folks that are on the line, but please spread the word. We've got several attendees on today, but if your voice is also very important for spreading the word and sharing the links that we're going to provide for you today to make sure that we are using this as a force multiplier to make sure our voices are heard. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Andy Seabolt. And he's going to go through a step-by-step tutorial on how to actually submit the more robust, complex comments to the FCC, in addition to an express version. And I would encourage you all to, at a minimum, get on that express version and get that done. It takes a matter of minutes. I just did it yesterday myself. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andy.
Thank you, Martha. I hope you can see my screen and my presentation. Is my presentation up?
Yes, sir. You're ready to go.
All right. Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon. I just want to talk about how to file comments with the FCC, specifically on the 4.9 gigahertz docket, which is 07-100. It's very interesting to me that within weeks of the forming of the Public Safety Spectrum Alliance, the FCC did not go back to their 6th notice of proposed rulemaking, but in a blog by Chairman Pai, it was revealed that they intend to vote on a rulemaking on the 30th of September. What we need to do is to try to stop that. And there's a hashtag on Twitter that says, "What's the rush?" And I encourage all of you to go and look at that.
Andy, you're accidentally self-muted. Please unmute yourself.
I thought I was unmuted. I'm sorry.
There you go.
All right. So did everybody miss all of that?
Yes, Andy, just review this slide again, please.
Okay. So the FCC makes it very easy to file comments. You can file comments on an FCC notice, a proposed rulemaking or other item. You need to include the proceeding or docket number. You need to include the official name of the proceeding or docket. You have to become familiar with standard comment formats, and I put one on the screen, and I think Martha has one available. You write your comments. If you're doing long form comments, you write your comments using the standard FCC form template or something like that. You review and edit your comments, and then the best way to do this is to save your comments. When we get into the express comments, it's a little different, but if you're writing longer comments, you should save them as a PDF file. Whoops, sorry. The way you do this is you go to fcc.gov and choose proceedings and actions. You'll see the red arrow there. Once you do that, you will get another menu, and you want to go down to electronic comments filing system and click on that. That gets you to the next point where to find a filing, if you don't know what the filing is, you can fill in search for text, specify the proceeding number, the name of the filer or the law firm or the attorney, all of this detail. And at the end of the form is a search button, and that will take you to the filing. If you are looking for a proceeding, to find a specific proceeding, it's the same way. You fill it in and you select search at the bottom of the page. The search should fill in some missing information and provide the FCC docket number and DA number. So you have all that information available. This is a filing that we made for the Public Safety Spectrum Alliance on the 4.9 gigahertz spectrum. I will say that this filing was made before the FCC issued their notice of rulemaking plan for September 30th. So there will be some additional filings. But once your comments are written, reviewed, and saved as a PDF, then you're ready to file electronically. The way you do that is you return to the electronic file system page and you submit a filing. Now there's a couple of tricks here that really make sense, but if you don't know what they are, you can get trapped in them. Once you type in, for example, the proceeding number 07100 in this case, you have to hit the enter key and it has to turn orange, because if it doesn't, when you go to get this checked, which they do, it'll pop up and say you forgot to do this. So the key here is after each entry, hit the return. At the bottom of the form, there's a check, so it'll do a confirmation on whether your filing is right, a review, and then it will give you the opportunity to request an email to be sent to you by the FCC when it's done, and it's always a good idea to request that. Now, if you don't want to file long comments, there is an express comment form, and this form is done right on the screen. You don't have to attach anything at all. You fill it out just the way you did a normal express filing. You can add your comments at the bottom of the form. You see down here, this is the bottom half of the form. There is a space for brief comments. And again, you see I clicked the email confirmation so that I would get an email confirmation if I filed on the short express comments. Make sure you select comment as a type of filing if that's what it is. Remember to attach your PDF file at the bottom of the form if it's a long comment. If you talk to anyone at the FCC regarding this docket or any other docket, you will have to go back to the filing system and file what is called an ex parte. And that is a letter written by you or an attorney, which is a record, a written record of you identifying to whom you spoke and to what the conversation was about. There is one other way to get hold of the commissioners. If you go to fcc.gov website and you go to the list of commissioners, everyone but Commissioner Carr lists their email address. I make an assumption when I write them that it will be read by one of their staff members rather than one of them. Brandon Carr, for some reason, just has his Twitter information up there. But if you look at the format of the emails, it's very easy to figure out what Commissioner
It's a connectivity issue. But there you are.
So if you're stuck or have any questions and you do want to file something, here's my email address, and feel free to email me or we can have a discussion on the phone if we need to. Martha, back to you.
All right, fantastic. And we apologize for any of the technical issues that we're having. Hopefully you were able to hear most of that. If everybody could come back on with their cameras and their audio open. We have received some questions. And I think, Andy, I think I'm going to pose this first one to you. Someone clearly, one of our attendees has done a little bit of reading and is clear on the principles that the PSSA is founded on. And one of the questions that they have, and this is kind of moving past our initial call to action for just getting in front of the vote on the 30th, but the other part of the PSSA's mission is to put the spectrum into the stewardship of the FirstNet Authority, which of course has done a stellar job managing the D block. So Andy, what I'm going to ask you is, could someone please explain the process behind asking it to be moved into that, and why this wouldn't be the equivalent to just giving the band over to AT&T?
Well, first of all, FirstNet Authority is a government agency. It's a public-private partnership. And AT&T, or the FirstNet network, is a contractor. That's very important to understand. They answered the RFP, they bid it, they won it, and FirstNet Authority's job is now to keep track of AT&T, make sure they're meeting all their milestones and serving public safety. I don't believe that signing the spectrum to FirstNet Authority guarantees that AT&T ends up with the spectrum. I think it guarantees that the public safety community has input through the Public Safety Advisory Council of the Board of Directors, of the industry that they normally deal with. FirstNet Authority has people in every state, and they get input from all the services. And I think that they have the right facilities and the right understanding of figuring out how to use this spectrum efficiently going forward.
Yeah, and I concur with that. And there's been a couple other questions that have come up, and a comment that was made that I think is salient as well. In addition to reaching out through the FCC channels and signing our petition, a recommendation was also made that you reach out to your senators and representatives in Congress. Clearly, they need to be made aware of this, and another channel yet again for first responders to have their voices heard. I'm just looking through the questions really quickly to see. Most of these I think are fairly specific questions that I think might be best served being answered directly to the individuals. So yeah, so I think in the interest of time, I think what we're going to do is go ahead and conclude, and yet again make the plea to everyone to get onto our webpage at thepssa.org. There is a petition there. We will also be following up with an email that will give you all of the links to the resource page, so you will be able to download the PSSA position paper in addition to the step-by-step tutorial on how to file your comments if you have not already downloaded it from the handouts pane in the GoToWebinar control panel that you have to the right of your screen. So with that, I am going to thank Andy, and thank you, Chief Johnson and Zagaris and Sheriff Stanek, and we really hope that you take the time to follow these easy instructions for comment submission to the FCC. If you didn't have the chance to download the supporting documents, we will be following up with you clearly. We hope that you enjoyed the webinar today and felt that it was time well spent. We deeply appreciate your participation. And again, we are the Public Safety Broadband Technology Association, and we want to be your advocate for all aspects of broadband use and utilization. So just by being here today, you clearly are supporting our efforts to continually bring you the cutting edge information about the current and future developments in the broadband access for first responders. As a final note, just a reminder, please sign the petition supporting the PSSA's work on your behalf. That can be found at thepssa.org. And also, again, reach out to your representatives, both in the House and the Senate. They need to be made aware of what is going on, and that it is raising concern with first responders as we look to a future that will be more than likely heavily reliant on broadband access, and a lot of it. If you have any additional questions on the topic today, please email us at info@thepsbta.org. That concludes our webinar, Public Safety's 4.9 gigahertz network in imminent risk, first responders call to action. Thank you again for your time, and please have your voice be heard. Thank you.